The last thing Emily ever expected was to be the punchline of her friend's cruel joke. They had signed her up for a blind date as a way to lighten her up, knowing she had been through a rough year, losing her mother, working 2 jobs, and barely keeping her small apartment. Emily, though hesitant, decided to go, partly out of politeness, partly because deep down, she wanted to believe something good could happen, even if only for a night. As she stepped off the bus, the golden glow of the city lights reflected in her anxious eyes. She smoothed her simple pink dress, the only nice thing left in her closet, and walked toward the cafe where her so-called date was waiting. She had braced herself for embarrassment, prepared for laughter at her expense, maybe even a stranger walking out once they realized it was all a setup. But what Emily found inside was not at all what she had expected. Seated at the corner table was a man who looked nothing like a prank, broad-shouldered, kind-eyed, wearing a crisp shirt but with a warmth in his smile that immediately disarmed her. He stood as soon as she entered, pulling out a chair as though she were royalty. Confused but touched, Emily sat down. She didn't know it yet, but this man, Daniel, was a single father and a CEO, a man used to boardrooms, not blind dates. What she thought was the beginning of another cruel joke was, in fact, the first page of a story that would change the course of her life forever. Daniel had agreed to the blind date out of sheer persistence from his daughter, Lily. At just 8 years old, she had told him that he deserved to smile again, that he worked too hard and always came home tired. She had secretly signed him up on a dating app using his profile picture and written a description that read, "A dad first, a CEO second, looking for someone kind." He hadn't planned on showing up, but something about Lily's hopeful eyes made him reconsider. And so, here he was, waiting at a cafe, expecting nothing more than awkward small talk and an excuse to leave early. But the moment Emily walked in, something shifted. She wasn't dressed like someone chasing money or appearances, her outfit was modest, her hair loosely curled, and her eyes carried both weariness and strength. He noticed the way her hands trembled slightly as she set her phone down, and instead of feeling amused, he felt a tug of protectiveness. They exchanged introductions, and soon the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Emily spoke about her late mother, about juggling 2 jobs at a diner and a bookstore, and how she dreamed of going back to school someday. Daniel listened intently, not as a CEO but as a man who knew loss and responsibility. He shared his own story, how Lily was his entire world after his wife's passing, and how fatherhood had been both his greatest challenge and blessing. Neither of them realized it, but their laughter began to draw glances from nearby tables. What had started as an intended joke for Emily was beginning to feel like the most genuine connection she had ever known. As the evening unfolded, Emily found herself forgetting that this was supposed to be a setup, a cruel prank designed to make her feel small. Instead, she felt seen. Daniel wasn't distracted by his phone, wasn't trying to impress her with flashy words, he was simply present. When she laughed nervously at her own clumsy jokes, he laughed with her, not at her. When she admitted how tired she was from holding 2 jobs, he didn't judge her, instead, his eyes softened with understanding. For the first time in months, Emily felt like she wasn't carrying her burdens alone. Yet, there was a voice in her head whispering that this couldn't be real. Why would a man like him, a man with success, a polished life, and an aura of quiet strength, be interested in someone like her? She tried to brush it off as politeness, maybe pity, but every time he leaned forward, listening as though her words mattered, her heart pushed back against her doubts. As they left the cafe, Daniel surprised her by asking if she'd like to meet Lily sometime. Emily's heart skipped, the invitation wasn't casual, it meant trust, something sacred for a single parent. She nodded, though a part of her still questioned if this was too good to be true. When she got home that night, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, replaying the evening over and over. What had been meant to humiliate her had instead left her with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. Somewhere deep inside, she began to wonder if life had just handed her an unexpected second chance. The following weekend, Emily met Lily. She had expected a shy child hiding behind her father's leg, but instead, Lily bounded forward with a smile that could light up the darkest room. "Are you the lady who made my dad laugh again?" she asked innocently, and Emily's heart nearly broke. It had been so long since Daniel had smiled freely, Lily explained, that she had almost forgotten what it looked like. Emily knelt to her level, and without thinking, brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Well, I hope I can keep doing that," she whispered. From that moment, Lily clung to her side as though they had known each other for years. They spent the afternoon in the park, Daniel pushing Lily on the swings while Emily cheered her on. Every small gesture, Lily's laughter, Daniel's steady presence, the way the three of them seemed to fall into rhythm, felt strangely natural, like puzzle pieces that had always belonged together. Still, Emily wrestled with doubts. She wasn't wealthy, she wasn't glamorous, and she had no polished future mapped out. She was just surviving. Yet, when Lily slipped her tiny hand into hers and said, "I hope you don't go away," Emily's throat tightened. Daniel caught the moment, his eyes glistening in the afternoon sun, and Emily saw something in them that words couldn't explain. Gratitude, hope, and maybe something deeper. The prank that was supposed to humiliate her had led her to a little girl who craved warmth and a man who seemed to see her worth more clearly than she ever had herself. Weeks passed, and what began as an awkward blind date turned into something neither of them had expected. Daniel and Emily started meeting more often, sometimes for coffee after her shift, sometimes for quiet dinners where Lily tagged along and filled the table with her endless chatter. Slowly, Emily's walls began to crumble. She found herself laughing again, dreaming again, even daring to believe she was worthy of love. One evening, as autumn leaves scattered across the city streets, Daniel invited Emily and Lily to a small rooftop dinner. Strings of lights twinkled above, and the skyline glowed like a painting. Emily thought it was just another thoughtful gesture, a way of giving her a break from her exhausting routine. But when the meal ended, Daniel rose from his chair, his hands trembling slightly, not with nerves of a CEO facing shareholders, but with the vulnerability of a man opening his heart. He knelt before Emily, holding a simple velvet box. Lily, grinning ear to ear, whispered, "Say yes," before Daniel even spoke. "Emily," he said softly, "I never believed in second chances until you walked into that cafe. What began as an accident has become the most real thing in my life. You brought joy back to my daughter, and hope back to me. Will you let us be your family?" Emily froze, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had come expecting mockery, but here she was, chosen, cherished, and offered a future she never imagined possible. In that breathtaking moment, the cruel joke that had once been her deepest fear transformed into the most beautiful proposal she could have ever dreamed. Emily's voice shook as she whispered, "Yes." The rooftop seemed to pause, the city's hum fading beneath the sound of Lily's delighted squeal and Daniel's relieved laughter. For Emily, the word carried more than agreement, it carried years of silent struggle, of longing for a place where she belonged, of finally choosing hope over fear. Daniel slipped the modest ring onto her finger, and for the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel like the outsider of her own life. She was stepping into something new, something real. That night, as the three of them stood together under the canopy of lights, it became clear that family wasn't about perfection, wealth, or appearances, it was about love freely given and courageously accepted. Emily realized that the cruel trick her friends had played was actually life's way of leading her to the very people she was meant to find. Months later, she moved in with Daniel and Lily, not into a mansion defined by riches but into a home defined by laughter, trust, and second chances. She pursued her long-abandoned dream of studying, supported by Daniel's unwavering encouragement, while Lily proudly introduced her as the one who gave Daddy his smile back. The story that began with humiliation ended with redemption, reminding everyone who heard it that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most extraordinary blessings. What started as a blind date meant to break her spirit had instead built her future, one where love triumphed over cruelty and hope outshone despair. And in that truth, Emily found not just a husband and daughter, but the family her heart had been waiting for all along.